Welcome back to the Kicks and Picks podcast. Nick is not here, as you can see. I was going to say Nick here with Coach and Scott, but I had to correct myself there because Nick, he left us high and dry tonight. I don't know what to say. After a couple weeks off, he'd be itching to get back on here, but he is
I know
not here.
he may or may not be cheating on us right now. It's a tough situation. We feel like we are the wife that is at home waiting for our beloved husband to return, and he is out on the town, not back in his home. So hopefully he returns soon. But if not, we may have to have a conversation with him about his dereliction of duties. But the good news is that our listeners still get to listen to us, and we have a solid slate of matches in both Italy and England to go through. So plenty of good things to still discuss, albeit without Nick's added flair intermixed.
Yeah, back to the club schedules after the international break, and feels good to be back with these big matches we're leading right into. So let's jump right into it, Scotty. Big match in the Premier League. It is Man City against Arsenal. City third on 63 points. Arsenal first on 64 points. Your Liverpool also mixed in there in second, I believe, also on 63. Level with
64.
City. They're also on 64, so level with
Yep.
Arsenal. My mistake.
Yep.
So this is a big one. City is favored at minus 110. The draw line is plus 275. Arsenal plus 285. You can look at the spread line. Arsenal pick'em is plus 180. Getting a quarter goal is plus 115. One of Nick's favorite bets there, and getting half a goal minus 115. Looking at the totals, over 2.5 set at minus 150, under 2.5 plus 105. And then some of the top goal scorers: Holland, even money; Foden plus 260. Everyone else in this match, everyone on Arsenal plus 300 or longer. Fire sell here, Scott. I'll start with this. Arsenal's title hopes end here with a loss. I mean, they've got the tough slate coming up, right? Is this like a bigger match? Maybe I should rephrase. I mean, their title hopes don't end, but is it more important for them to win than City?
I think honestly, it's a must win for either team. I think if you don't win this match, your chances at a title become significantly diminished. And I think there's a few reasons for that. The first is obviously you're going to become the third horse in a 3-horse race. You'll
Yeah.
be assuming Liverpool will get the job done against Brighton. They're going to be at home, so they should have the advantage there. I think they're minus 275 on the money line, so pretty significant favorites. If you lose this match or you draw, I guess the draw would be the only change here. But if you lose this match, you'll have Liverpool and the team that you just lost to, basically 3 points, if not, in City's case, potentially 4 points ahead of you. Both teams, in that race remaining look to be, virtually unstoppable. I think Arsenal have won every match for the last 2.5 months in the league. Liverpool's only loss were to Arsenal in January. And this is the last meeting of the three for the rest of the season. So you'd really have to bank on somebody to really royally mess up in order to kind of start to gain that ground back. And I think the other part of this is, Arsenal and City have a really tough draw in Champions League. So it becomes, to a certain point, like, do you prioritize, maybe that competition a little bit more than the league, given the fact that you're now no longer in control of your own destiny in the league. So I think a loss here for either club would virtually eliminate them from the competition, or the title competition. A draw here gets a little interesting. It's probably worse for City to draw than it is for Arsenal. Arsenal would still be within 2 points of Liverpool, again, assuming Liverpool get all three this weekend. But I certainly think you can't afford to lose for whether you're Arsenal or City.
Yeah, I think because Liverpool's the other variable in the equation, I think that's what makes the win so important for both sides. Like you said, if this was a 2-horse race, it was just Arsenal and City, and maybe Arsenal loses and they fall 2 behind City, it hurts certainly because it's a 6-point match. But it doesn't mean the end of the world, because if City slips up somewhere, you can make up those 2 points in one match.
Yep.
The fact that you have Liverpool, like you said, who could pull 3 ahead of Arsenal, could pull 4 ahead of City, depending on how the results pan out. I think either of them becomes, you're running out of, you talk about a 3-horse race, you're running out of furloughs to go, right? You're running out of those, you're down to that home stretch of this race. And I think that's what makes it so difficult. So I do think the win is very important for both sides. City's favorite at home. Understandably, also the team with the pedigree in terms of lifting trophies. Got the best of Arsenal twice last season. And this is kind of a match too, Scott. I look at if Arsenal's going to win a title, and obviously they still have to fend off Liverpool if that happens and beat them out down the stretch. It kind of has to get that Premier League champion Man City monkey off their back, so to speak, that proverbial monkey that there's always like these up and coming teams in almost any sport, American sports too. You see it. You always got to get past the defending champs to get to your title, and I think this is one of those situations here. Besides even just having to worry about Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the gambling aspect, I think this is a big narrative game for Arsenal. I've been very dismissive of them as title contenders for the last 4 months because when it's Klopp versus Guardiola, when it's Liverpool versus City, like it has been for the last 6 years, there have been other clubs that have been thrown into the mix here as potential title contenders, and then they always kind of wither away.
Yeah.
And then last year, obviously, that was a competition between Arteta and Guardiola, and Arsenal were looking really good up until about this same time last year. And then they had that 4 match losing streak, and they were just completely out of it. And so I think, as much as anything, this match is massive for just the narrative surrounding Arsenal and their, how they're viewed in the league.
Yeah.
I think you really need to be somebody that contends all the way through the season, even if Arsenal does not win, right? Like, let's say Arsenal wins against Manchester City, but they still, lose out on the title to Liverpool because they would still be level on points. I think the narrative would still be, very favorable for Arsenal and their hopes for getting a title next year. Versus if they lose out in this game but still finish in second to either Liverpool or City, I think that narrative continues for at least another season where it's like, are Arsenal really a club capable of getting it all the way to the finish line? So I think it's really important for them to get this win. I think it also, just from like a mentality standpoint, if they lose this and it becomes, their schedule after this, I think is, Luton at home should be pretty easy. But then you have Brighton away and Aston Villa at home. Those are tricky matches. If you drop points there, all of a sudden you've dropped 3 points or points in 3 out of their last 4 matches. You have a very similar storyline to what you saw last season, where it's, do they have enough, juice to get through a 38 game schedule? Can they compete on multiple fronts? Because, at least this year they're going to be in, the quarterfinals and potentially the semifinals of the Champions League. So I think it's very important for Arsenal to win this one, maybe more so than City, because there's more on the line beyond just the points for this season. I think there's a lot of, potential, storylines that could be written about the club or written about Arteta. A lot of doubt in the, minds of the fans and supporters about whether this is a team that can really truly contend for a title, or if they're just going to be a club that hangs around and then fades off when it, push comes to shove.
Right. You're going to be that. And Arsenal kind of had that reputation a little bit, I think, too, when I started following football, where they were really good
Yeah.
in the Champions League, but they had trouble always getting over the hump in the Premier League and getting the title. And
Yeah.
Arteta wants to avoid that reputation returning. And yeah, I mean, would Arsenal fans love to get to the semifinals of the Champions League? By all means, right? We all would. Any club that is, especially one that hasn't been that deep in the Champions League as long as Arsenal, but I'm sure they'd love a Premier League title even more than getting to like a Champions League semifinal or final. Just because it's been so long for them to win a title. And that is certainly, I think this is the one that if you can get this out of the way, then you can focus on, what Liverpool's doing and what you're doing. And hopefully for their sake, make it a 2-horse race. Cause then you'd be 4 points up on City with a win here. And then you've got that little cushion where if you do slip up once, they're still in your rear view mirror a little bit. So I think that will be something to keep an eye on for sure. Your team hosting Brighton, maybe last season or early this season, that's a more of a tricky match than it probably is at this point after the way Brighton was dispatched of by Roma in the conference, the Europa League, and the way they have really been inconsistent in the Premier League. So, like you said, most likely Liverpool at Anfield's getting 3 points this weekend, and the pressure shifts to these two,
Yeah.
and I think even slightly more to Arsenal. Other matches in the Premier League that stand out, no big head to heads, but just keep an eye on some of the other teams that are competing for top 4. Villa hosts Wolves. Who else we got? Spurs is hosting Luton Town. So teams that are expected to win those matches keep up their push for the top 4. So those are just ones to keep an eye on. I don't know if anything else jumps out at you, Scott. United at Brentford.
Yeah. I mean, I have at least one of those in my locks at the end of the
Yeah.
pod. So maybe we can kind of give that as a teaser. But I certainly will be talking about at least one of those matches in a few more minutes.
All right, so we'll return to the Premier League in a bit. Serie A, I'll give you an update on the table, and then Scotty will take us into some of the big matches on the weekend. So prior to the international break, there was that one cancellation in Serie A between Atalanta and Fiorentina. So now we have some teams with a match in hand due to the unfortunate passing of Joe Barone, Fiorentina's sporting director. But this is what the table looks like at this point. Inter running away with things. 29 matches played, 76 points. Milan 62 on 29 played. Juve 59, Bologna 54, Roma 51, and then it's Atalanta 47. They do have a match in hand. Napoli 45 on 29. Fiorentina also a match in hand on 43. And I guess we could throw Nick's Club Lazio in there at ninth, also on 43, but 29 played. So title looks wrapped up, like we've been saying for months now. Probably second and most likely third, but fourth and possibly fifth can be Champions League spots, Scott. So we have some pretty important matches this weekend.
Yeah, and I think maybe we'll kick off with one that has some pretty significant impacts around the Champions League. You've got Napoli hosting Atalanta. Napoli sitting at plus 105, the favorite. Draw plus 245. Atalanta plus 235 on the money line. Looking like goals will be a plenty in this one. I think that's pretty typical when we talk about Atalanta and usually Napoli with their attack. Maybe not as much this year. Over 2.5 is minus 125. Under 2.5 plus 100. Coach, are you buying or selling that the loser of this match has their Champions League hopes dashed for the rest of this season?
I think if it's Napoli, for sure at this point, because if Napoli loses and their 30 matches played on 45, and say Roma and Bologna both win this weekend, especially, then you're looking at possibly a 9-point cushion between fifth place and yourselves. And then you've also lost ground to Atalanta, who could be up to 50 with a match in hand. So I think for Napoli, they're done and dusted if they don't win this match. I do. Atalanta, on the other hand, if they lose, if they win that makeup match against Fiorentina, which is still an if because Fiorentina is also in the mix, you're on 50 with the same amount of games played as Roma, who could be at 51, could be at 54, and that's if fifth place qualifies. I do think if either of these teams loses, I do think the Champions League hopes are in trouble. I think they're in jeopardy for Atalanta, and I think they are dead for Napoli if the other results don't go their way this weekend. Because 8 matches to go, if you have to make up, say, a 9-point cushion on a club like Roma, I know you played them head to head, or if you have to make up even more than that on Bologna, I think it gets very complicated for them because there's too many clubs between yourselves and that fourth spot or even that fifth spot.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I mean, I might be a stickler and say that I don't know that Napoli still have Champions League hopes. I think I maybe have killed those a month or two ago. They are still sitting in seventh, 9 points back, but a fourth, I should say. Whether or not Italy gets the fifth spot, it seemed like a certainty based off of where they stood in Europe, a couple weeks ago, but they did not have great results in Champions League and in Europa. So that maybe isn't as much of a given as we were discussing on a previous pod. But I certainly agree with Atalanta. I mean, they've really had a murderer's row of a schedule in the last couple of weeks. They drew against Juve right before break. Before that, I think they lost to Bologna. They lost to Inter. And I think they played Milan before that. I mean, you're talking about, 4 of like the top, I guess it's all 4 clubs, right? That's the top 4 in a row leading into Napoli. And then I think they have Fiorentina after this. It's an absolutely brutal stretch in the schedule. But the flip side is it will get easier after that. So you'll see some more games against the teams in the bottom half, bottom third of the table. So maybe they can right their ship there. And, depending on what happens with Roma and maybe even Bologna, if they start to slip up, I could see maybe Atalanta kind of dragging themselves back into it come April or later in April.
Yeah,
But
and the Fiorentina match that you mentioned is Coppa Italia, and that's two-legged affair when you get to the semifinals like they're in. So not only do they have to play Liverpool 2 midweek matches,
true.
they also have Fiorentina once at the beginning of April, once at the end of April. So they've got like almost a full month of 2-week matches, 2-match weeks, I should say, which makes things
Yeah.
even more difficult on them.
Yeah, no rest. So I could see that. I mean, I think a loss here, it's tough because, when you're looking at this stretch, you would maybe take, 6 points out of 4 or out of 4 matches, like given the competition. But when you're looking at potentially 3 points out of five, that's a tough one. So I think I am inclined to agree with you. I think a loss probably is the death knell for Atalanta's Champions League hopes. But again, their schedule does soften up. I think they have a pretty easy run in for the rest of the season. Crazy things happen. We always say that in Serie A. There's always going to be
Yeah.
upsets. There's always going to be opportunity to gain ground on people ahead of you or teams ahead of you in the table. So it's a very slim chance, but I think they need to get something out of this one, if nothing else, than to prove that, hey, we can actually get our form turned around after this 4-game gauntlet in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean Roma go through a four-match gauntlet like that. That includes Atalanta toward the end of April and early May. So, right, there might be opportunities to pick up points on Roma. If fifth place is indeed going to be a Champions League spot for Italy, so opportunities will be there. It's going to be interesting, but I do think it puts a very serious dent in their Champions League hopes. Napoli, though, I think is dead. They're probably on life support right now. I think they're dead
Yeah,
with the loss here.
yeah, totally agreed. All right, let's shift into our second match in Serie A that we're going to cover. It's going to be Fiorentina versus Milan. This one kind of stands out. I think it may have been a little bit more interesting if Milan weren't dead set in second with a 14-point gap to first and a 3 or 4 point gap over third. Juve. Fiorentina trying to climb back into European competition qualification spots, sitting in ninth. So certainly that's still in play for them this season. Fiorentina are coming into this one as underdogs, but a lot smaller of a margin than I would have expected. They're sitting at plus 175 on the money line, draw line plus 220. Milan are plus 150 on the money line. Coach, you obviously are much more into Serie A and are ingrained in the going ons of each of these clubs. What am I missing here? Why is Milan coming into this at plus 150 when I could have very easily been convinced to take them at like a plus 100 type of level?
Yeah, I'm thinking part of it's the road aspect. Fiorentina, like I mentioned, very unfortunate, tragic passing of Joe Barone, their sporting director, who was Italian American, did a lot for soccer here in the States too, especially in Brooklyn, where he was from. That postponed their match against Atalanta, so they haven't played in a while. I guess we should have mentioned that too in the previous matchup. These two teams haven't played in a while because of the international break going on probably about 3 weeks now. Um, I don't know if any of it has to do with that aspect of it, more of the home road aspect. Um, I was a little surprised that Milan was such a big number here. I wasn't surprised that they were a plus money favorite, being that they're on the road against a team who is battling
Mm-hmm.
for European places and a team in Fiorentina that is unbeaten in their last six in all competitions, similar to Milan. But Milan's been in pretty good form, and some of their players, especially Christian Pulisic, he didn't score for the U.S. in that final against Mexico, but he's been in really good form, and he could be the key man for Milan in this one as well. Um, I think it is a big number on Milan. It's very tempting. On the road, I could see them maybe eking out maybe have to eke out a draw. But I looked at their draw no bet. It was still minus 115, which is not a terrible number. That's probably what I'm going to target in this match. It's not one of my locks. I thought about it, but it's definitely one of my favorite bets of the weekend. Um, the only thing that scares me a little bit is maybe Fiorentina is a little extra inspired. They maybe want to honor Barone and maybe like they're at home, the crowd's going to be there. It's going to be an emotional match probably. And I think that could work two ways, right? It could fire the team up, or it could weigh them down a little bit when you have a passing like that. And I mean, they both. Well, I won't say they both need to win for European purposes because Milan's pretty set in the Champions League place. It would
Yeah.
take a collapse by them not to, but Fiorentina needs it more, and maybe that plays into it as well. Fiorentina at home needs a win if they're going to keep pushing for a European spot. I mean, right now you look at the standings, and like we mentioned before, yeah, they have a match in hand, but even if they win that match in hand, they're still seventh place on 46 points. They're still behind Atalanta. They're still behind Roma. They're still behind Bologna. So Champions League is pretty far out there. Europa League would be a step up for them because they've been in the
Mm-hmm.
Conference League 2 years in a row. So maybe even qualifying for Europa League would be a good end to the season for them, depending on how their Conference League run continues to go. Um, but those are maybe just some of the things that are being factored into. But if you ask me which bet I like the best in terms of like money line and who to win, I'd probably have to target Milan in the two-way money line at minus 115, getting that draw no bet.
Yeah, I think I like your point about Fiorentina really needing this more than Milan. That might be the point that explains this to me the best. Especially coming off of an international break, got to get kind of settled back into the regular scheduled programming with your club. So maybe
Yeah.
that gives Fiorentina that a little bit more of an edge in at least the first 30 minutes or first half, especially being at home. But we're talking about a Milan team that is 5-0 in March, scored 12 goals in those 5 games, only conceded 4, playing some of their best ball of
Yeah.
all season long. Can they just pick up where they left off going into break? I think this is, we sometimes talk about international breaks. It's really beneficial for some clubs. Liverpool are beneficial of it, getting some of their key players like Trent Alexander-Arnold and Allison Becker back. Clubs like Milan maybe would have preferred to just keep going because they were in incredible form. They're firing on all cylinders. Maybe they can find that form again pretty quickly. But, I think if it weren't for that break, this would be a no brainer for me in taking that plus 150 because they were rolling. And even if, Fiorentina needed it more, I don't think it would have mattered.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. Other matches to keep an eye on. Obviously, you got to look at what the other European challengers are doing. We have Roma traveling to Lecce on Monday. They don't play in Easter on in Italy like they do in the Premier League, so they play Saturday, Monday. Roma plays Monday. That's one to keep an eye on. Lazio is hosting Juventus. I believe it's the first match for Igor Tudor in charge of Lazio after Sadi left, and Bologna is hosting Salernitana, who is deep in the relegation zone. So those are just other ones to keep an eye on. You expect 3 points, especially for Bologna there, which would keep the pressure on some of these other clubs. So we'll keep an eye on those. But we've got a lot of picks for these matches also in our locks of the week. Anything else you want to talk about, Scott, in the Premier League or Serie A before we move on?
No, I think we've got about everything covered. Obviously, Champions League also going to be picking back up, so stay tuned for. Hopefully, Nick will be back for that one. We like to cover the quarterfinals as that kicks off again in just a few days.
Yeah. Yeah, the schedules get busy right away. I know they kick off with a one, the one match this week on the weekend, and then Champions League, Europa League back next week for our clubs. It'll be hectic again, and these clubs will
Yeah.
be tested for sure. So moving into our locks of the week, we had another positive week before international break, 5-3-2, up another 1.8 units. That puts us at 53, 33, and 9, up 15 units in the calendar year 2024 and moves us to up 3.6 units on the season at 136, 125, and 14. So we've finally trended back into the black, Scott, over the last few weeks. And we're going to look to continue that trend as 2024 has been pretty kind to us.
Yeah, I'm going to take a lot of credit for that because I've turned my losses into pushes. So I'm no longer dragging the team down. I'm just holding water and or treading water and letting you guys do your thing.
Yeah, it works, right? I mean, just not losing units sometimes is as good as winning
Oh
units
yeah,
when you're trying to rebound from a rough start to the season.
yeah.
Look,
I
I
had
know
a
sometimes you get like it's like when you get that bonus bet back from the books, right? To get that like risk-free single game parlay from DraftKings, you hit 2 out of 3, you get your bonus bet back, and you move along, and you just take it for what it is.
Yeah, and I think one of my matches that I drew, I think it was Luton Town, was losing to Nottingham Forest 1-0 for the entire match, and then I think in like the 90th minute they got that equalizer, and that felt to me just as good as a win. So
Yeah.
to your point, yeah, sometimes not losing units is just as good as gaining them in certain instances.
All right. So you want to kick us off with your first winner?
Yeah, so now that I've learned to walk and get some pushes, maybe I can learn to run and get some wins. I'm going to start with a team total. We kind of alluded to it with earlier in the podcast. Manchester United playing at Brentford this weekend. I'm taking the United team total over 1.5. It's minus 125. To be honest, you could talk me into either. I think Brentford at home with Ivan Toney back, their team total over 1.5, I think was about plus 110 or thereabouts. So good value there. But ultimately, I sided with United because they've been on an offensive hot streak of late. They've scored in 14 straight matches and in every match they've played so far in 2024. Coming back from international break, I think that's a club that could have used it. They're certainly getting a little tired towards the end of their February March schedule, so they come into this one a bit more rested. And I think honestly, they're probably going to need 2 goals if they want to win at Brentford. I would be stunned if Brentford are held scoreless at home. So if they want the win, they're going to need at least two, maybe three. So team total over 1.5 here, I think, is a pretty certain thing. You know, I think Bruno Fernandes, Rashford has been playing a little bit better, still wasteful in some instances. Had a worldie a couple weeks ago. I think they're kind of finding their footing on offense now, and it's certainly showing on the table.
All right. I'm going to go to the Bundesliga with my first one. And I don't know if this is a trap line or not, but I'm going Borussia Dortmund. They're plus 1.5 goals at Bayern is minus 120. The reverse fixture was a 4-0 thrashing of Dortmund by Bayern. However, I like the form that Dortmund is in right now. Winners of four straight. I think they at least keep it close here. Give me a 1-goal loss, a draw, or a win. Any of them will do here. I'm going to take my chances on it. I considered plus a goal, but I like the plus a goal and a half because I think the loss is more likely than the draw here. And I like it at minus 120. It's not often you get a club like Dortmund at minus 120 when they're plus 1.5 goals.
Yeah, I think the shocking thing for me is I think Harry Kane is healthy. I think the match just before break, he had a weird collision with the goalpost, had to be subbed out. His leg looked a little iffy at the moment, but set to return. So I think that is you know probably why this line is so heavily skewed in favor of Munich right now. But with these two clubs, expecting one team to blow out the other, it's a tall task. So getting Dortmund at plus 1.5 here, I think is
Yeah,
something you have
especially
to
to do
take.
it twice in a season seems really difficult to me.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be crazy. All right, my second lock of the week is also going to be a club getting a goal and a half. This time I'm taking Burnley plus 1.5 at Chelsea. It's plus 110. It feels a lot like a trap line to me. Chelsea are not known to blow out clubs right now. I think they've managed to win by at least 2 goals in just 2 of their last 14 matches. So you got basically whatever 12 out of 14 chance historically of this hitting. And the reason for that is they don't really keep clean sheets. Again, only 2 clean sheets in their last 14 matches, and scoring 3+ goals doesn't happen very often either. Just 3 times in their last 15 matches, they've managed to get at least three on the score sheet. So I think this is a very large spread. I get it. Burnley certainly going to be relegated, not a very formidable side. Chelsea at home, but I think we're giving Chelsea's finishing a little bit too much credit. They're very wasteful in their finishing. Sterling, probably the poster child of that, which is crazy because he's also on a team with Mudryk and Nicholas Jackson, who are wasteful in their own right. So I think Burnley will get one. Chelsea doesn't seem like the club that's gonna keep Burnley off the score sheet, and I don't like Chelsea's chances of getting three. So I'll take the goal and a half and hope that Burnley can hold up their end of the bargain.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't trust them to get that many goals either. So I'm going to go Roma team total over 1.5 at Lecce at minus 105. The reason I'm taking the team total here is because Nick, I'll give away his first lock. He has Roma money line at minus 125 at Lecce. I love that bet as well, but I also like Roma team total over 1.5 at Lecce, and that's because Roma's been scoring multiple goals in every Serie A match under De Rossi prior to that 1-0 win against Sassuolo before the international break. That was a match where Roma looked a little tired. They just played Brighton on the midweek, just advanced in the Europa League, and I think they were playing a relegation battling side that just wasn't going to concede much. I think they get back to it here. From the looks of things, they'll have Paulo Dybala back for this one to go along with white hot Lorenzo Pellegrini, who scored a goal right in front of me at Red Bull Arena on Sunday. So that was the highlight of my day on Sunday when I got to go see Italy play against Ecuador. And Romelu Lukaku, also as a protagonist, had a nice assist for Belgium against England. I think with that attacking trio in tow, as long as they're all starting, I like them over a goal and a half here at Lecce, just close to even money at minus 105.
Yeah, I almost like the team total better than money line in this instance. I think you guys had Milan split team total and money line the week before international break, and it was the team total that hit, whereas the money line lost because it was a 2-2
Mm-hmm.
draw. So I think getting Roma's team total here at minus 105 might be the better value, even though Nick claims he stole this pick from you.
Yeah, he stole it. They didn't show up, so I probably could have taken it back. I don't think anybody
Yeah.
would have frowned on that.
Very true. All right. Well, we'll keep the team total train running. I have a team total parlay. I've never really done a team total parlay on the pod. I've done a couple of money line parlays and a couple money line and a total parlay, but Never two team totals. So for my inaugural parlay here, I'm going to take Newcastle and Aston Villa team totals over 1.5 each. It's plus 145. I know what you're thinking. Newcastle not in the greatest form, which is fair. But the good news is West Ham are probably worse, and that's exactly who Newcastle are playing. West Ham are averaging 2.2 goals allowed in their 10 matches in 2024. So plenty of opportunity for Newcastle to get chances created in this one. Isak, who has been probably the lone bright spot in Newcastle's play in recent weeks and months, is currently minus 105 anytime goal scorer. So I think he's going to be involved in this one and really just need somebody else to kind of pick up the slack for the Newcastle team total to hit. Aston Villa on the other side, they have scored 2 goals in 4 of their last 6 matches before break, so certainly on an offensive role of their own, similar to United. And talking about Isak being almost automatic, Ollie Watkins has been that all season long. He's got 26 goals in 29 matches this season. I think you can bank on him getting involved in some capacity at home versus Wolverhampton. So, Ollie Watkins might be able to get this team total in either goals and or assists on his own. But even not, I think Aston Villa's been playing well enough to warrant at least a 2-goal cushion in a game against a Wolverhampton's team that's been pretty unpredictable. But on the road, I think it's okay to assume that they're not going to be at their best.
Yeah, if you hadn't taken the Villa one as part of this parlay, I was looking at that as well. I thought that was a pretty good bet in itself. So
It was like minus 145. I want to say
was it
minus
that much? I
150.
thought it was a
Yeah, that's
little.
why I went with the
No, I might have been
parlay.
looking at Villa and over 1.5. I think
That
might have
could
been the
be.
combo I looked at because
That
yeah,
could
the
be.
number wasn't the best. Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason
Um.
why I stayed away from something like that is, like I said, with Wolves, they're very unpredictable, and they might manage a 2-2 draw or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's the other side of it. All right, my last one. I am going with Genoa money line minus 105 against Frosinone. I know Genoa kind of screwed me last time they played Juve. I had both teams to score, did not hit. But in this one, I'm more fading Frosinone because they have the worst record in the league, road record in the league, and are on the only side in the league not to win a road match to this point in the season. That's 29 matches in. They haven't won a road match in 14 or 15 matches. They're also winless in their last 8 in the league. Meanwhile, Genoa has been solid all season and sit firmly mid-table. The Grifoni welcome back both Matteo Retegui and Albert Gudmundsson from international break, where they both scored goals for their respective national teams, Italy and Iceland. I think they take care of business behind that informed duo, get at least 1, possibly 2, and that should be plenty to take care of Frosinone, in my opinion.
yeah, and then to close out Nick's picks, funny enough, he has a pick from each of the matches we previewed already. In the Fiorentina Milan match, he's taking the over 2.5 at plus 100. Already talked about it, but we've been on Milan a lot this season, either as a podlock or as a pick for one of our own. They haven't really let us down yet, so Nick's going to continue to ride with them scoring. He's fully expecting fireworks in this one, and also thinks that this could be a good opportunity for those of you who like to bet corners to take the over 10.5. I think it's hit in 5 of the last 6 for this specific matchup. So lots of goals in this one. Getting it at plus 100, good value. I would probably have to agree. I think Milan certainly will get involved. It's just a matter of Fiorentina maybe chips in one if needed. Other lock, his third and final lock of the week, he's taking Napoli and Atalanta over 2.5. That's minus 125. We talked about it. Napoli, their one bright spot really is, getting goals between Kvara and Osimhen. So pairing that with Atalanta and their history of overs, you can go ahead and say that the Atalanta overs are back. So with both teams starting for points, expect there to be plenty of goals in this one. Over 2.5 has hit in 6 of the last 7 of their head-to-head matchups, and Napoli, both teams to score, has hit in each of their last 8 overall matches. So certainly a good recipe for goals in this one.
All
All right,
right.
Coach, you want to go ahead and take the pod lock?
Sure. All right. Podlock, we're going back to the Premier League. We're going full of money line parlayed with over 1.5 goals at Sheffield United. Similar to what I'm doing with Frosinone, we're doing the same thing here with Sheffield, and it's fading a very poor team. Sheffield's having as bad of a season in the EPL this year as just about any club in the past 10 years. They're dead last in the league thanks to a potentially record-breaking defensive record that's conceded 74 times in 28 matches. So pretty close to 3 goals per match conceded. Fulham should have no problem netting a handful here and leaving town with all 3 points. We like them to get the job done and get at least 2 to their name and take this one at least 2-1 at worst, I think, in our opinion, probably.
Yeah, this is just us taking advantage of a borderline, I don't want to say generationally bad, but like historically bad Sheffield United team. You don't really see a team this uncompetitive after getting promoted into the
Yeah.
Premier League. Usually they do something that can at least make them a thorn in some of these mid-table club sides, but they really haven't been able to do that. And the way that they ship goals is, incredible. It really would be the worst defense. They're on pace to have the worst defensive record in this in Premier League history. So
Yeah,
we'll
it's
continue to
pretty
try to
bad.
profit off of it while we still can and while they're still playing in the Premier League because they're a virtual lock to be in the championship next season.
All right. And that wraps us up here. If you're listening on your favorite pod platform, you can also find us on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe there as we try to build up our channel there. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, we're available on all pod platforms. And of course, we're on Patreon where we post all these picks, these episodes, and occasionally some extra things that we come up with as well. So thanks again for listening. We'll catch you again next week. And hopefully, Nick will be back with us.